Hi, romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. Author ALANNA MARTIN joins me to discuss her small town, enemies to lovers romance, Pause and Prejudice, Book 2 in Hearts of Alaska series. ALANNA also shares how she began reading romance. She chats about writing Jewish characters in her work, and she reveals her reading and writing habits in QUICKIES Q&A. Enjoy, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hi, ALANNA. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
It is exciting to meet you in person. I was very excited to delve into your Hearts of Alaska small town romance series. What is the overarching theme?
Love sort of healing and bringing people together, and also through generations. So, younger generations coming along and trying to fix the mistakes of the ones that came before them. PAWS and Prejudice is the story of one of those small town people in Helen who really does not like outsiders and does not really trust anyone. And what happens when she's sort of forced to work with the new guy who comes to town, and she's very resentful of him being in town, and it turns out that he has a fear of dogs. And her dogs are the only, thing that she really, really loves. And there's this big misunderstanding because she doesn't realize that he's afraid of dogs at first, and he doesn't really want to tell her because he thinks it makes him look silly. So they have this whole blow up, and it's about them getting over that and sort of working past their barriers to get to know each other.
Kelsey, the female protagonist, is quite prickly.
She is. I think people either love her or they hate her.
I mean, you seem like a lovely, non-prickly person, ALANNA, but is there a Kelsey inside of you?
There might be. I mean, I think definitely some of her sarcasm is kind of like my love language. So that's, how I was raised. If we're not sarcastic around you, it means we don't like you. If we're polite.
Why Siberian huskies and not chow chow dogs, which are my favorite dog?
Well, I didn't know that, first of all, when I was working on this, or there might have been, some chow chows thrown in there for good measure. I always love huskies, though. I think they're just such pretty dogs, and they're kind of mischievous dogs. They're a lot of fun. And it turns out that my editor really liked huskies too. So it was just kind of perfect. She's like, "What about huskies?" And I was just like,
Yes, and they're indigenous to Alaska. Is that right? Or they're found in Alaska? Not that they're just running around Alaska, but I feel like they belong in Alaska.
I think they have a long history with sled dogs and stuff like that. So definitely it has an Alaskan feel to it.
As you mentioned, there's an enemies to lovers dynamic between Kelsey and Ian. They have a lot to overcome, misunderstandings, pride, prejudice. Was it challenging to bring them together in love and understanding on the page? Because there were moments I was like, I don't know. Can ALANNA make this happen?
That's kind of the fun of enemies to lovers, though, right? I won't say it's why it's the best trope, but I mean, I think it ranks up there. I don't think it's challenging. Actually, I had a lot of fun writing them. That book has kind of flowed. I think that ability to just write sarcasm into their interactions. I feel like that one was actually not very challenging compared to some of the couples I've tried to write.
I always wonder, how much planning goes into the enemies to lovers trope, because I feel like it can be really tricky to pull off, because you can't have them hate each other so much that you're like, oh yeah, now they love each other, So how much pre-planning goes into crafting each character individually and then considering how are they going to work together? I mean, does that involve, plotsing and pantsing? I don't know which one you are, a pantser or a plotter, but is there a lot of thought before even going into it? How am I going to do this?
I think so. I think a lot of it, for me anyway, is kind of subconscious because I spend so much time thinking about their characters and sort of imagining them together. So, and I am a plotter. I'm a definite plotter. So when I go to, sort of sketch that whole thing out, I think a lot of it's kind of already there. So it sort of feels like it's coming naturally, but I think really just my brain was kind of working on it in the background without me noticing too much.
Okay, so there's almost like a second brain running.
It really is. I mean, like I hear like lots of people talk about, you just got to let your subconscious work on it and it'll figure it out. And like, it's weird because it does usually.
Yeah. I mean, there are times I feel like there's several brains working in my head. I'm like, what do I do with them all? So Kelsey, unbeknownst to most of the town, is a successful, steamy paranormal romance author who writes about husky shifters living in the Alaskan bush. Is this a novel that you want to write for real?
I think it would be a lot of fun. So, I mean, I would totally be up for writing as Kelsey, writing her husky shifters.
Ah, so you mean you would use Kelsey's name?
I could.
And make it like Kelsey wrote it. That's a really excellent idea. That really is
actually. So I think I could do that.
Yeah, because I was like, whoa, there's another book inside Alanna waiting to get out. Now, was this an idea of a book you had before you even thought of writing, the series? And you're like, oh, I don't know if I really could write it, but I'll just, put it in another novel. So was it, or did you just invent it for the purpose of Pause and Prejudice?
I did just kind of invent it for the purpose of Pause and Prejudice, but I read a lot of paranormal, or I did used to read a lot of paranormal romance. So I think it's all, it's all been in there somewhere probably. And it's like, oh, use that.
Yeah. I immediately, my second brain or third brain started thinking about how that would work. Like, so husky shifters, so they're dogs by day, then they turn into men at night. How do they reconcile those two parts of themselves? Like, I was like, I bet Alanna has the answers. I was like, she's got to write one of those. She's got to write a book. So Ian, the male protagonist, and his business partner / friend, Micah, are Jewish. Kelsey's cousin, Josh, is, I believe, half Jewish. I rarely find Jewish characters on the page, particularly in romance novels. So tell me about your decision to explore Jewish heritage in the book and in the series.
There are not a lot, as you said, Jewish characters in romance. I think there's suddenly starting to be sort of this renaissance where you're seeing a lot more of them, which is fabulous. But I kind of made the very conscious decision back in 2016, around the presidential election back then, that I wanted to make sure that I was really including that aspect in my books, because I am half Jewish. You don't know it with a last name like Martin, and I kind of wrote that somewhat into, Josh's story in Heart on a Leash. But I wanted to make sure that I was putting that into my books and making sure that there was more representation, because I could write these characters and it just wasn't something I normally really thought about in my day-to-day life, but it kind of became clear to me as we started seeing shifts in our culture and people, expressing opinions that were frankly offensive a lot more loudly, that, I wanted to make sure I was putting some more representation out into the world, good representation.
What is your approach to the world building in Hearts of Alaska? I know when you say world building, you think, fantasy, paranormal, but it really does apply more and more to romance, and especially small town romance, because part of the appeal is the town and the setting. How do you decide who gets to live in Helen, Alaska? And do you, as a plotter, logistically, how do you plot it out?
I'm kind of minimalist when it comes to world building. So like some people will just go on and just create this enormous, fleshed out world and then use this little tiny piece of it. I generally only create what I need. So it comes about sort of partly organically with writing the story, and the rest of it, kind of just sort of what I need to be even thinking about the story. So a little bit before I begin, and then sort of develop it as I go and keep lots and lots of notes. I started reading romance when I was going through cancer treatment. And so I was just devouring tons of books all at once. And I don't think any of them were really sticking with me, but they were really, really helpful for me when I was going through treatment. And I sort of transitioned. I had been reading and writing a lot of YA at that point, and transitioned more into adult romance. I don't even know why, but it was definitely during that period of time I had lots and lots of free time sitting on my butt hooked up to infusion machines or just traveling back and forth between my home and Boston. And I was just reading a ton of books, and it was so helpful having those kinds of stories with me.
Right. Would you say that reading romance novels was an important part of treatment and healing?
I think it was. I think, it's why I put so many words into Kelsey's mouth for defending the importance of romance and why it was such a great genre, is because that was definitely my feelings. That, this, you don't know what a person's going through when they're reading a book. And if you can write a book that makes people feel good and forget about their real troubles for a time, how can you say that is not an important book and that is not an important genre?
What did you do right before our interview?
Boring answer. I tested the camera to make sure it was actually working this time.
Okay, so you checked, did a camera check.
I did a camera check because I always have a tech fail, and I didn't have a tech fail today.
Okay,
so
right on. What are you currently reading?
I am reading Set on You by Amy Leah, which is coming out next year.
Oh, so this is an advanced reader copy that you have.
It is.
Whoa.
Author perks.
Which romance novel are you looking forward to reading?
Possibly one of my most anticipated coming up ones that I haven't read yet is Weather Girl by Rachel and Solomon.
Very good. Do you know the author?
I've talked to her, yeah.
Do you read book reviews of your work?
I try not to.
Okay. But
I'll leave it at that. Try not to.
You have, apparently.
I have. And occasionally. It's usually not a good idea.
Where is your favorite place to read?
We have this big cushy chair, which of course I'm not sitting in right now, but in our living room, that is my favorite place to read.
What is your favorite reading snack?
Probably coffee. It's just coffee for everything. Reading, writing.
Okay.
I don't have a problem, really.
Well, then you already answered question number 9, which is, what is your favorite writing snack? So it's coffee. How do you take your coffee?
I drink it black.
Intense. How many hours a day do you write?
I'd say probably an average 1 to 2. So we'll say 1.5 maybe.
Okay. Which 3 items are always on hand when you write? Well, I know one of them.
Aside from the coffee,
yeah.
Lately it's been a candle.
Okay.
And that's about it. I mean, I've got my laptop, and I have too many other things around. I just get distracted.
If you woke up tomorrow in the fictional town of Helen, Alaska, what's the first thing that you would do?
Get coffee?
Oh, Alanna, it has been a sincere delight chatting with you here on Reader Seeks Romance.
This has been very fun. So thank you for having me.